Welcome to the Public Safety Innovators Podcast. Connecting you with experts and trendsetters who are leading innovation in law enforcement, private security, and personal protection. And now, your host, Adam Wills.
Welcome to episode 24 of the Public Safety Innovators Podcast. On this episode, we are going to fill a gap in our drone series. Up to this point, we've discussed the capabilities drones have for us in public safety and private security from a proactive perspective. But on almost every episode to date, when the discussion about counter-drone technology comes up, we've fallen short of identifying viable solutions. Well, today, I am going to present you with a viable solution as I interview Linda Ziemba from AeroDefense. AeroDefense has actually been around for a while now, but has largely been deployed for permanent infrastructure. Their AirWarden technology has now gone mobile and can be deployed on any incident. This technology is definitely about to take off, pun intended. So I'm excited to present it to you here on the Public Safety Innovators Podcast. Let's go ahead and dive in. Welcome to the Public Safety Innovators Podcast. Linda, we are going to talk about counter-drone detection today. Is that right?
Yes, sir. We are.
All right. And so today is the, we're calling it the maiden voyage, the first episode of the podcast where we are going to be recording video, and our listeners get the option now. They can go to YouTube or go to the website, psi.chat, and they can check out this episode of the podcast and take a look at our smiling, happy faces while we chat together today. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what you do over at AeroDefense? What is the problem you guys are solving?
Well, first of all, Adam, thank you very much for having me on your podcast. We all at AeroDefense appreciate it. What we do is help people know when drones fly over their facilities when they're not supposed to be. So some of the problems that people have experienced with the drones are at stadiums and mass gatherings where drones shouldn't be flying over people because it's dangerous, so you could have accidents. There could be nefarious actors who wanted to actually attack people at mass gatherings. And one interesting situation is at correctional facilities and jails. A lot of cool uses for drones. We're not against drones, but the inmates at numerous facilities have figured out drone delivery for drugs and tobacco and money, and in some cases, some wire cutters that were used to execute a jailbreak.
Oh, wow. Are you allowed to share with us where that story happened, or is it better to use some discretion there?
Well, that's a public article from several years ago, actually. There was a jailbreak out of South Carolina, and It's believed that cash and wire cutters were delivered to him to help facilitate the prison break.
Oh, wow. Now, I used to work in a jail many years ago, and at that time, our concern was because we had an old facility in a downtown jail, and our inmates would make these rope lines by tearing apart their sheets or saran wrap from the meal, the lunch sacks, or whatever they could come up with, toilet paper and toothpaste, in order to run these string lines down from the upper level of the jail and be able to hook onto things that other people would drop off, contraband that people would bring to them. And now, it's not that many years later, and here we are talking about drone delivery of
Mm-hmm.
contraband.
Yep.
It's just amazing to think about how that technology has changed so much. And on previous episodes of the podcast, we've been talking a lot about drones. We've kind of had a drone series going, and we have talked about all the things that drones can do. And we've talked very little about the concern of what drones can do from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
We have
Mm-hmm.
mentioned it a little bit, but the extent of which we've talked about that, really, our conversations have said, you know what, there's really no good solutions out there for counter drone detection
Mm-hmm.
and mitigation. And so I was really excited when you messaged me and reached out and said that you were interested in being on this show and talking more about the solution that you guys have for counter drone detection. You've listed off some of the verticals, I guess we'll call them, that you work
Mm-hmm.
within industries, stadiums and mass gatherings, correctional facilities. And I want to unpack that a little bit more. And maybe you can tell us why. I mean, we talked about contraband, but let's go a little bit more in detail. Why is this such a problem? Why do we need to have better solutions for counter drone detection in general from a public safety standpoint?
Um, Sadly, we saw over this past year that there's a lot of civil unrest in our country,
Yeah.
and there were instances of drones at some of the protests and other, at the protests. Um, I can't really speak to the details because we weren't privy to them, but we know that drones being used by protesters are a concern. Those drones could be used either to direct the crowd, so they put the drone up in the air so that people on the ground can direct um, protesters. And in a protest, there are legitimate protesters and there are people that are there to cause problems. And there are people that are there to cause problems can incite riots and make a protest escalate to a bad situation. They can use the drone for aerial surveillance to direct the crowd to some place where law enforcement is not, or someplace they are, depending on what they want to happen. Um, we recently received a contract from the Air Force to deploy drone detection um, outside the United States because our troops have been attacked by drones outside the United States, dropping IEDs and grenades. Drones can easily be weaponized. So just to give them the situational awareness that there's something in the sky and they're either being surveilled or they may be under attack. And our system is unique in that we locate the pilot. So that's a great mitigation strategy when shooting down a drone or taking it out of the air is not an option. Like here in the homeland, when you're over a mass gathering, that drone crashing out of the sky could be a much bigger threat to the public safety on the ground than the the foolish guy who's just flying it around. So send your public safety staff to that pilot and have a conversation with them to stop the flight. By have a conversation, in some cases that may mean, face down with your hands behind your back because that drone has been weaponized and a law enforcement officer took over control of the drone flight, which is safer than trying to shoot it or use a mitigation, tool on it.
So how exactly does your system is called AirWarden? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how exactly does AirWarden detect the pilot and locate the pilot? Does it also detect the drone? Maybe it does that first, or what does that process look like?
hmm So that's a very interesting question because everything is referred to as drone detection. And we've participated in a number of evaluations and exercises, and often the focus is on the drone, when reality is finding the pilot before they get that drone off the ground can be the best form of mitigation that you have. So the way that our system works is um, we detect the most drones are flown by radio frequency controller. The controller sends signals up to the drone to tell it where to go and whether to hover or turn left or right or fly, whatever. It's the control. The drone sends back on that same channel information about where it is and that sort of thing. It also will send back video. So our system uses it's called spectrum sensing. So we look at the signal pattern and different physical characteristics of it, so we don't take any information from the signal, which would trigger federal wiretapping laws, Pen Trap Act, those kinds of things, which require a warrant. So
Sure.
we use it's kind of like a Geiger counter, if you think about it. So we would be able to detect both the drone and the pilot, and we use a network of sensors. So like a cell tower would locate your cell phone, we it's called trilateration. We trilaterate to pinpoint where that signal's coming from.
Okay. So, and this is a software-based technology that you can deploy from a laptop computer, a tablet, or mobile. What does that look like for the user?
Well, I'm glad we're on video. Let's see how long my hold on. So that's a one of our big advantages is we were we were built in the New York metro area, urban, and we didn't have the luxury of a big, fancy test flight area out in the desert and vehicles to transport things around. If you look at the most CUAS systems, counter drone systems, they're pretty big and bulky sort of things. But with our Air Force contract, we're going to deliver a unit that's about this size that can go in a public safety vehicle, and then we'll connect an antenna to it, which I don't have one of those, but I don't know. It's roughly
and
this size, maybe just a little bit bigger.
and so, for anybody
But
that's just listening to the audio,
oh, right.
the box that Linda is showing, it's about this. Would you say it's about the size of a boot box? So, like if I buy a new pair of duty boots, it's about the same size as that box would be. Is that right?
If you have really small feet,
Okay.
it's
So maybe more like a shoebox. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's not
yeah,
very
but
big.
yeah, no, yeah, yeah. It's
Okay.
not very big, and we don't expect it to weigh any more than 20 pounds.
So that's the unit that actually does the detecting. Is that right?
Yes. So we would
Okay.
have a network of those to detect and locate.
Okay.
So it's the same sensor does detect and locate.
Okay. So if I'm trying to set up this counter drone strategy, if you will, around a football game, for example, around a stadium,
hmm
th- essentially the way your technology works is, if I'm the guy that's in charge of that, working with you, I've got to put a certain number of these units around the
Mm-hmm.
stadium in order to kind of set um, a network, if you will, of
Mm-hmm.
these antennas that can therefore communicate with each other and then triangulate the location of
Mm-hmm.
both the drone and the pilot. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay,
And
so
if
I'm
you're a
catching on.
stadium owner, yeah, good job.
All right.
So if you're a stadium owner or you're an operator that has tons of events, all year round, or even just a very heavy season, you'll probably want to put up a system permanently,
Or a
um,
correctional facility. Yeah,
or a correctional facility.
sure.
Um, but if you're a stadium that has maybe 8 NFL games a year, and that's your busy season, it may be a bit of an investment for you. So, um, but it's still important to have drone detection there permanently, in my opinion, because it, even if you're a nefarious guy and you've got plans, you've weaponized your drone and you're going to go there, you're not going to go there and fly for the first time on your day of attack. You're going to go and you're going to do some test flights, and you're going to
Yeah,
see what the security response is to an innocent drone in the area. And you're going to see, from how far away can you fly? And you're going to, check the traffic patterns and, all that sort of stuff. So it's important to know, even on a non-event day, if someone's there just flying to get, surveillance on your property, you know, why? And but you may not need a full system. So what we're talking with some stadiums and police departments about are putting in a subset of a full system permanently at the stadium, enough to give you situational awareness in your off times. But for an event day, your local police department could bring in mobile sensors to extend the network
oh,
and have
okay.
better coverage.
So with all of these sensors, or I guess I called them antennas earlier, so I don't know which. I'm probably wrong, but these sensor antennas, we'll call them, as you deploy them around in this kind of network, or this um, well, we'll just say a net, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
How do they link together? Is that all into one central software system, or
Mm-hmm.
I can monitor what they're detecting, and
Mm-hmm.
and it will actually put a pin on a map that shows me a
Mm-hmm.
location? What does that look like?
Yes, you're a pretty technical guy.
I'm
So
pretty
the
nerdy. Yeah,
the
don't underestimate my nerdiness. It's pretty legit.
so, what each of these um, sensor antennas is doing is detecting and determining how far away the drone is from the antenna based on the power level. So it's, X number of meters away. And then you have a network of these all providing their own information. And that's the trilateration, is the intersection of those detections. But that is done by a command server, as you were saying. So there's a central server that takes all the inputs from these detections, and then that does the actual trilateration location. Um,
and that's and
that
that's able to be deployed in a mobile state, or does that have to be um, a permanent
mhm,
fixture? Can I pack this in the back of a patrol car and be able to go, or maybe not a patrol car, but like a patrol vehicle of some sort, and be
mhm.
able to take this to a location, set it up, and run it from that location?
Yep, we have different form factors we can deploy in. And one is a rack. Like a lot of these mobile command centers have computer rooms, basically. So we can provide a rack tray mount. And then, this antenna would be run up maybe on have you ever seen a Wilbert pole? It's, you can run a pole up, I don't know, 40 feet or so.
Oh, yeah.
Or any sort of pole that the command vehicle has. Put the small antenna up at the top of the pole, and you can have your server in the command center. You could also have a virtual server. So the server could be in the cloud.
Sure. Okay. Very good. So
we're pretty flexible on the deployments.
Are you familiar with DJI's Aeroscope system at all?
I am.
Okay. So the reason I ask about that, episode 20, when I interviewed Kent Moyer, we talked quite a bit. That's probably the most extensive amount of time that we've talked on this podcast about counter drone considerations. And he mentioned the DJI Aeroscope system, stating that as far as he knew, that was the best or only counter drone system out there. But he did mention a big limitation to that was that it only can detect DJI drones, not other manufacturers. So I guess beyond that, what I'm curious about as it relates to comparing to Aeroscope, what is different about how your technology works versus Aeroscope's? And can your system detect any manufacturer of drone?
So first, yes, our system can absolutely detect any manufacturer of drone because we do the physical spectrum sensing. So we've detected NYPD, New York Police Department's robotic dog at an event because it's a remote control device. It just happened to be a dog. So yes, we can detect homemade kit drones, all of that. So we operate on the spectrum sensing, which there's no question about us pulling information out of the signal. So the Aeroscope extracts information out of that signal. So like the serial number and things like that, which would require a warrant. There is, and of course, they only detect DJI drones. There's pending legislation in the Senate now, Bill 73, I believe it is, the American Security Drone Act of 2021. It has bipartisan support. It prohibits the use of federal dollars. So anybody who's listening who's planning to get FEMA grants like the Port Security Grant or UASI or any of those Bureau of Justice grants, federal dollars, this bill prohibits federal dollars from being spent on Chinese company technologies. And because Aeroscope is a Chinese company, there's a very strong probability that that will be prohibited because it includes counter UAS, counter drone technology in the bill. The concern is I was going to say the concern is with other security attacks, putting a device in your infrastructure, a hardware and software device in your infrastructure, presents a very easy target for an adversarial nation state to use it as a vector to get to many other systems and other endpoint devices.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's actually that bill that you mentioned has kind of been in the works for a while, hasn't it? Because we talked about that way back on episode 3 with Anthony DiMolina of Tactical Drone Concepts, and he mentioned that was I don't remember if he said that at the time that was kind of a unspoken regulation or rule with these grants, or
Mm-hmm.
versus it actually being a law that's passed, or if that was, I don't remember exactly how he shared that, but I know he
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that that was at the
Mm-hmm.
very least something that was in the works.
Yeah, there was a very similar bill in 2020 that had the bipartisan support, but they couldn't get it passed before the session ended. So it was basically reintroduced as the same bill of 2021 in January.
Okay.
So.
So I'm wondering if you can share with us a little bit. You mentioned to me earlier some concerns about the use of RF based detection and legalities around that versus
Mhm.
the way your AirWarden system works. Can you just briefly explain the difference there and what the concerns are exactly?
Mhm. Sure. Yeah, the for anybody who's listening, there's a document that was issued by it was a joint advisory between the FAA, FCC, DOJ, and DHS in August 2020. Um, and it was a joint advisory about drone detection and mitigation technologies and the legality of that. So that document does a good job of sort of laying it out. But in a nutshell, um, any radio frequency system that demodulates a signal, think of it as like an envelope. So if you demodulate the signal, it's like opening the envelope to look and see what's inside the envelope. So systems that do that, no question, they definitely trigger the pen trap and associated regulations. Then the next step is it's a little more subtle. So let's think of your envelope again. So you've got the envelope and you can see who it's addressed to, but so you as an RF drone detection company may say, look, I don't look inside the envelope, so I'm legal. But this document, the advisory, joint advisory, says no. If you look at the addressing on the envelope, or in drone terms, if you look at a timestamp or a GPS signal or anything like that on the signal that's not intended for public broadcast, then you also trigger those. And because AeroDefense doesn't, we don't look at the signal at all. We just do this spectrum sensing like a Geiger counter. We don't run amok of that.
Okay. So in theory, since you guys are doing the spectrum sensing, and you mentioned this earlier about detecting that remote controlled dog, was that right? Is that what you
Mm-hmm.
said?
Yes,
Um, in theory, then your system can really, it's not just about detecting drones, it's really about detecting any remote controlled device.
that's right. So we do have a library, and that's one of the big questions that um, people ask. They're like, "Well, how many drones are in your library?" And we try to educate and explain that our system doesn't depend on a library. We have a library, so when we detect something that we've seen before, we can say, "Oh, this is probably a DJI Mavic or Mavic Pro, and this one is probably an Autel." Um, and we will present an icon on the screen and we'll send out text alerts. We haven't really talked about how the system works, but that's what happens. Um, and I forgot what I was saying. We'd send out the
That's
alerts.
okay. If you want to unpack that some more, I didn't realize there was more that we left undiscussed about how the system works. So yeah, if you want to go through any of that and clarify,
Mhm.
that'd be great.
Yeah. So what happens when we have a detection is we put a icon for the drone. If it matches this database that we have, it will tell you what kind of drone it is. We classify it and say, this is the type of drone it is. And then we'll locate via a drone icon or a controller icon on the map. And that we will also generate a text alert so that anybody who's supposed to receive them will get a notification. So back to your discussion about any sort of remote control, when we detect something that has the characteristics of a drone, we'll display an icon that indicates it's an unidentified device. So that's what we would have displayed for the dog.
Yeah, personally, I think that really increases the value of your system. The fact that it can detect any remote controlled device, not just a drone, because, obviously there are lots of different kinds of remote controlled devices out there that can carry payloads and do things that are nefarious. And so, I think that's awesome. I didn't know that coming into this interview, and that certainly, I think, like I said, it increases the value of what you guys have to offer, I believe.
Yeah, because if your system is dependent on a database, then you won't detect that signal at all. So homemade or kit drones, which would probably be the choice of a nefarious person anyway.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. We detect those. Whereas a system
Okay.
that's dependent on a database would not.
Got it. So let's talk about the future a little bit. What do you see coming in from the future of drone technology, and how does AeroDefense and AirWarden fit into that picture? What do you guys have planned for the future of counter drone detection? Where does all that go?
Yep. Well, I think I might have mentioned earlier, we're all in with mobility. What we've seen is that threats and incidents appear when you least expect them. So you need to be able to quickly get drone detection resources in place to help with incidents. So we're doing a lot in the area of mobility. We down the road, we see LTE drones as an area where we will focus and research on. Right now we filter that kind of stuff out, but when the real 5G gets here and drones can fly on it, then we have that in our planning. But those are probably the big two. And then we're also looking at widespread urban drone detection. So say a smart city sort of environment where you do want to have a permanent protection, but you also want to supplement it with public safety. We can deploy our small antennas multiple kilometers away from the sensor electronics. We can deploy it over fiber. So if a city has a strong fiber infrastructure, then drone detection could be something that you can very, very discreetly deploy, because now your antenna is only about that big, and that you can put them on light poles and street lights anywhere.
It sounds like a very scalable system then. I mean, it's you can go from anything to as small as a mobile deployment system in an incident command center all the way up to large cities. With that scalability in mind, I guess something that I neglected to ask you earlier that I should have, and I realize this is a difficult question just because of just how scalable that system is. But let's just say, for the sake of this conversation in question, I'm a public safety agency and I want to purchase this system to have as a mobile ready system in my incident command center, or to equip in a permanent sort of status around my jail.
Mhm.
Give me a range. What am I looking at for a cost to do something like this?
Yeah, that is a very hard question because
I assumed.
you know it it depends. um, it depends on your infrastructure. Like, are we talking about a fiber backbone, or are we talking about LTE, or um, you know, are we talking about a mesh capability, which doesn't have the access? But I don't know, for budgetary numbers, you could say between 25 and 40,000 per sensor, and then scale up.
Okay. So, I mean, either way, the safest bet is for somebody to contact you directly, I'm sure. But, certainly I wanted to give people an idea of what that sort of thing looks like,
Hmm. Yeah, I'm sure my salespeople will be really mad at me for quoting numbers.
Well, you can just blame me. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about your background. Where did this idea come from? Did you come up with it, or did somebody? I mean, what's the genesis of
Hmm.
this idea for AeroDefense and AirWarden? And I believe that you may have a little bit of a entrepreneurial story to share with us, and maybe some challenges you faced along the way. So let's talk about you. What does your origin story look like?
So the idea came from a project that I was working on, to film kids doing baseball practices.
Okay.
And there was a drone pilot filming, and the drill they were filming wasn't complete, but the drone shot up in the air, flew across the field, and landed. And I asked the pilot why he did that, because they weren't done.
Uh-oh.
And the pilot said, "It looks like it's recording now."
Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, so the idea came from a project that I was working on, which involved filming kids doing drills for baseball with a drone.
Okay.
The drill wasn't over. The drone shot up in the air, flew across the field, and landed. When I asked the pilot why he did that, he said, well, he's flying it from his iPad. He's like, the battery got low, so it takes itself back to its home point. And I said, oh, okay. That was in 2015. So this is a super competitive market, believe it or not. And um, we are some of the old timers in the space since 2015. Later in 2015, I saw the drones interfere with the firefighters in California. I saw a drone crash land at an Angela Merkel speech. And I can tell you to the day and the moment that this idea for the product came was when I saw on TV the segment about the drone crashing at the US Tennis Open that year. So September. By October, I had a company. I had recruited for employee number one, Taylor Sinatra, to help me build this product and company. At the time, we were called Drone Go Home because the pilot said, oh, it goes back home. My background's internet security, so I'm like, oh, well, we'll just apply internet security techniques to this problem, and we'll prevent everything from coming in that's not supposed to, like anti-malware software does. And then I learned about all those three-letter agencies whose rules I was breaking or potentially going to break. and decided that I couldn't sell something that might land me in jail or financial ruin. So I pivoted the company after careful examination of all the laws to a detect, locate, classify, and track company that operated within all the regulations. So I spent many a sleepless
Okay,
night
that's a neat.
worrying about that stuff.
Yeah, that's a neat evolution of how that occurred. So you said your background was in internet security, is that right?
Part of my background. I'm old, so I've got a lot of background.
Hey, that's okay. Cool. Well, anything else you wanted to talk about that we didn't get covered?
One thing that I would mention that we're quite proud of, our technology is AirWarden is the only drone detection technology that has the Department of Homeland Security Safety Act, which is an anti-terrorism act of 2002 designation. So that we're quite proud of that.
That's pretty awesome. What does it take to get that?
A lot of due diligence by Homeland Security on your product and how it operates, and then a commitment to provide reports on usage over a period of time.
Okay, so kind of a audit of sorts.
Yes. Yes.
Well, very cool. Any closing thoughts, final words, anything like that you want to share with the audience?
We are here to serve. We appreciate everything that public safety does for us. And, I don't have a public safety background, but we are kind of nerdy, geeky people who are really dedicated to building a product that meets the needs.
Great. Well, why don't you, Linda, it's been awesome having you on the show. Why don't you let everybody know how they can get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you directly, connect with you on social media, or reach out to your sales team to get some more information about AirWarden or whatever it may be. How would people do that?
So our website is AeroDefense, DEFENSE.tech, TECH. And my email address is first name, last name, Linda.Ziemba, ZIEMBA at AeroDefense.tech. If you just want to reach out to sales, we're sales@AeroDefense.tech. So, yeah, please do reach out to us.
Okay, awesome. Well, of course, as usual, I will put all of the links to those things that Linda mentioned in the show notes for this episode, along with links to all the resources that we've talked about. And you can find all that by going to psi.chat/024 for episode 24. Linda, it's been great having you on the show. Really enjoyed this conversation. You filled the hole in our drone series here, where we've talked a lot about drone capabilities, and we've talked a little bit about drone counter defense, if you will. And now we've talked about that ad nauseum, and we now know that there is a viable solution out there for drone counter surveillance. And thank you for sharing the details about that, and look forward to seeing good things from you guys.
Thank you, Adam. We appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Hey, thanks for sticking around till the end of the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review at psi.chat/review. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other public safety innovators like yourself find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to psi.chat, click on episodes, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.